Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks very much, Anne. Without further ado, just like before we introduce a nice piece of work that I think you will enjoy this morning on how do we infuse universal design into education. And we did a significant piece of work looking at curriculum and developing content, but also how do we engage with the student. So using Shakespeare, which I am a scholar of, as I look down at some of my colleagues who will giggle in the back row, that using the phrase, "it is normal to be different." So without further ado,
Meet the Normals, Adventures in Universal Design. Exterior of a house on a sunny day, the normals are outside.
Meet Harry Normal. Harry is the father of the family. He is a stay-at-home dad. Meet Mary Normal. Mary is the mother of the family. She is a manager in the local supermarket. Meet PJ Normal. PJ is the baby of the family. Meet Betty Normal. Betty is the granny of the Normal family. She has arthritis and has lately experienced mild hearing and vision loss, but she is very active and uses a cane to get around. She loves to play the Wii regularly with her grandkids. Meet Susie Normal. Susie is 18 years old. She is going to college. She is rarely seen without her iPod and guitar. Meet Johnny Normal. Johnny is 10 years old, uses a wheelchair, and loves history and music.
Family enter the house.
Today will be a treat, as Betty is bringing the family for a pizza. First, we need to get the bus, so let's check the bus times.
Parents are using the family PC.
Oh dear. This seems to be very complicated.
Susie uses her smartphone with simple layout instead.
Now we've got it, let's go. For many of us, we never think twice about how we use technology, travel, move in and out of buildings, or use the web. But really, when you think about it, we all often encounter problems doing these things.
Family at bus stop.
And accept this as a part of life. Consider what it is like for the normals getting on the bus and their experiences. Firstly, let's look at the bus shelter location. Are things in the way? Is the bus shelter big enough? Simple things like seating. Access to information when you need it in a way that makes sense. There are other environmental factors, such as light, noise, and so on.
Bus arrives.
And the design of the bus itself.
Betty and Susie get on. Dad tries to get baby's buggy up step onto bus but fails. Bus driver asks for fare. Flustered mum drops her purse. Bus departs, leaving Betty, PJ and Johnny behind. A design studio in a different part of town.
Thanks to good universal design, it doesn't have to be like this. In order to build a working shelter that suits the needs of everyone, we need the right team. So, let's meet the team. First off, I'd like you to meet Siobhan. She is a software developer. Dara, our civil engineer. Rory is our architect. And Paul, our industrial designer.
Normals and designers around a table.
Creating the easy-to-use, universally designed bus shelter is a collaborative and fun process. Right, guys?
Always.
Let's see how you do it. Firstly, we have the discover phase, where all the designers keep an open mind, deferring any decision-making until they have considered a range of alternatives and approaches to the design. They need to have collected as much information as feasible, including new or existing feedback from people. They need to look at the project from the perspective of the end users. So who are the end users and what do they need? Well, a great way to find out is to involve the end user in the process through things such as focus groups, where we ask them what they think. Then we have the definition phase, where the designers must decide what they want the design to do. To help achieve this, they must keep in mind the range of people that will be using the design, outputs from the discover phase, and consider what they want the design to do. Then we have the development phase, where the designers look at actualizing the needs they have identified in the previous stage. This stage typically includes the development of simple preliminary designs and asking people what they think. Lastly, we have the delivery phase, where the designers see if it all works. They may get experts to look at their final designs. Another great way to test the design is through user testing of prototypes, where we test early versions of our products on users with a diverse range of abilities to see what works. If something doesn't work, the designers can go back to an earlier phase and try again. The universal design process, with the 4 phases: discover, define, develop, deliver. Now we have applied the universal design process to designing the bus shelter. Let's go back and see what happens this time.
Family approach new bus shelter. Dad with PJ in a buggy and Johnny in a wheelchair now have an unobstructed path to the bus shelter. Bus shelter is tall enough to accommodate Mary's tall stature. Seating is low enough to accommodate Granny. Bus timetable and fare information is simple and understandable. Starts to rain. Bus shelter is large enough to shelter the entire family. Bus arrives. Bus kneels, allowing level entry access to all the family.
Thanks to universal design, the normals can go about their day in a world that accommodates us all.
Mum has fare ready and pays without any fuss. Family waves and bus pulls away.
Universal design is the design of a building or place, product, service or technology so they can be accessed, understood, and used to the greatest extent possible by all people, regardless of their age, size, ability or disability.
Created by the Centre for Excellence in Universal Design at the National Disability Authority, in partnership with Dublin Institute of Technology, NU Imanuth, Cork IT, Dundalk IT, National Learning Network, University of Cambridge, Institute of Technology Blanchardstown and NCBI, Universal Design Curriculum for Third Level Education Project. Animation by Treehouse Republic. For more, go to www.universaldesign.ie/education.
Very good. I hope you enjoy that. Again, we've used that both at second, third level education, and it kind of sells what we're talking about. Again, just outlining the 4D model that we propose, which is very easy to remember. The problem phase is discover and define. So you do a whole discovery before you actually define what is the problem. And then the solution phase is develop and deliver. And that can be used right across, be it from product or be it for curriculum, new curriculum development. I talk about the 5 C's, talking about the child, the curricula, classroom, campus and community. I suppose looking at it from, if you want to, from an ecosystem perspective, which would be the micro, the meso, the macro, but in more simple language, which again is a cornerstone of universal design, it is looking at the 5 C's that we would classify, and the child, the learner being at the centre. And what we're trying to do and propose is that we provide the access that the child, learner can participate and progress. So there are key aims in most of the work we try and do. So it's about access, and that be buildings, etc., that they can participate in whatever activity or the curricular learning, and that they can progress through that education institution onto third level, etc. Work that we're just about to complete in conjunction with the Department of Education is looking at campus design in Ireland. So I will be talking more specifically, I suppose, about third level, but this could very much translate to both second and primary or special education for Ireland, but also for abroad. So again, looking at universal design, how can the environment be a positive enabler for a whole range of people, not only the learner themselves, but also the teachers, their parents, families, etc., as part of participating in education. Again, just quickly, we deal with a whole range of stakeholders, both at government level, but also in the educational sphere, but also in private. A lot of work that we do is with standards bodies, not only at national level, but also European and international level. And as outlined in, when my beeper works here, next. This is where we need a keyboard. Hit a key. Here we are. Aims of the centre, again, very much outlined around standards, education and awareness, and how we do that. But looking at this in the context where we are, definitely we are now seeing a more demanding citizen customer out there. We're also looking at the social complexity and diversity, which again is a cornerstone of universal design, that we celebrate diversity. Overstretched resources, I think everybody in the room can vouch for that. Implementation gap of government, a lot of great policy, and again this is looking at it from an international perspective. People talk that we may have IDD, which is implementation deficit disorder, but we are trying, definitely as a public body, but also it is important that we're all part of this game, that we need to play together and hopefully come out winning at the far end. Again, demographic change is a huge onus now on governments around the ageing populations, not only in Ireland but right across the globe. And again, when we talk about money and funding, the ratio of the working population to older people is dramatically changing now and definitely over the next 15 to 20 years. This is based on OECD work in 2011. Again, just from a universal design, and when we talk to designers, we talk about if universal design is integral, then you can actually create magical places that delight the senses and inspire the human spirit. Again, Elaine Ostroff would be one of the founding mothers of universal design, and particularly looking at how education is central to, I suppose, developing, as we heard from Mary Doyle earlier on. This is a process, it's a journey that we're on. So we haven't reached the destination as yet, but we are making a significant inroads in getting there. Again, this is defined as already stated within our Disability Act, but it's also part of the UN Convention, and it's putting the onus on government to undertake, promote research development of universally designed goods, services, equipment and facilities. So all going well, the Irish government will ratify the UN Convention in 2015. And this will now become a legal instrument that we can actually use as part of our toolkits as we progress things here in Ireland. Again, just to, I suppose, honour Ron Mace, who was an architect, wheelchair user in the States, and he talks about, it's always talking about improving on things we design to make them more universally usable. So it is this journey process that we're all on together and constantly improving. I think it's important to just outline the difference as defined in the World Disability Report, the difference between accessibility and universal design. And in that report, it provides accessibility provides basic access and usability of facilities, products, services for people with disabilities. Universal design talks about enables. So we'll talk about enabling independence, social participation for all, through continual improvement. So it is, again, this process, this journey we're on. Just putting design is not good out there, and this is coming from Phillips, where they talk about 2/3 of society out there are either frustrated or having difficulty with product services. And it is only less than 1/3 that find product services easy out there. We won't talk about them. There's some in the room, I think. Poor design. This is an example of a house not on this island, but close to us, on providing accessibility for a teenager that no longer wants to live in this house, and particularly find that it takes them about 10 minutes to get just down to the footpath. This is not good design. Great design. And Anne used this slide earlier on. It's okay, Anne, we'll allow you to use the slide. We sponsor with the Royal Institute of Architects in Ireland in 2013 the first Universal Design Award for Architecture. And we were delighted that the Student Centre in UCD were the first winners of the award, but also they won the People's Choice, which is by all architects vote for the People's Choice. Critical to this was actually funded by the Students' Union. They started raising funds over 10 years ago. They put a levy on all students, and some of you may be here. But the vision, as again we're talking about vision, that these students were paying a levy for something they were not going to be accessing in their time in college. So the whole centre cost over 60 million. And as Anne said in her opening remarks, the students were central to the design, the whole process of building this. If you walk into this building today, my two children use this every day. They're in UCD at the moment. There is not one piece of graffiti. There is not one piece of paper on the ground. The students see this as their own space within the campus. So it is great, I think, example not only of great design, but also showing the process and the vision that the Students' Union had in UCD. Following up on that, last year's winner was a house here in Dublin. And again, young teenagers were in this house, and there was one teenager who has a significant impairment. And when I met with the parents, they said the first time in 14 years that they all slept soundly in that house, which is quite remarkable. So when we talk about that continuum and that journey for students, it starts in their own home, it starts in their bedroom. If they had a poor night's sleep, you're going to see the reaction of that in the classroom the following day. So again, talking about that journey, it starts in the home, and how does that student make it from that house all the way using transport, public transport, be it walking, cycling, whatever it may be, to get to the actual school environment where they can participate and progress in their education. Again, we're seeing great examples of universal design in our own city. We need to move this out into the countryside, and coming from the West, they are very envious of some of our new technologies, such as our DART and Lewis lines here in Dublin, which we were heavily involved in looking at the design and access of these going back 10 years ago. And again, using technology that, again, as well demonstrated by Tim in his opening address, using technology such as iPhones, etc., that people can actually figure out what times the bus or the DART, etc., is coming. So again, integrating the built environment with the technology, with the services, is core to the work that we do in the centre. And again, OECD in 2013 talk about what are the core pedagogical elements. It's about the learner, it's about the educator, it's about the content and its resources. And you will hear more about that throughout today and tomorrow. And I suppose us as both educators and be it the human resources as part of that, I think we're on a continuum, on a journey, moving from an expert to a facilitator to what I would now classify as we need to be activators. That we are not just there, as using that great phrase, as a guide on the side. We are very much participating in this together in a collaborative way, as again will be outlined when we talk about looking at a whole system view of the learning environment and placing learning at the centre of the community. I think we need to celebrate learning in our own communities, in our own towns, villages, and often that has not happened, where people get frustrated about the traffic congestion in the village. But if you go to the west of Ireland today, where you're now seeing nothing happening in villages. I think I would prefer if the village was congested with young children, parents, grandparents bringing their children to the school, which is right in the heart of the village. A great example in the research that we will be publishing very shortly is Dumfries in Scotland, where they see the town as a learning town, and that the learning is both from a leisure, from a work, and from an educational perspective. And looking at how the various schools, there's 5 different schools in the town, going from primary, special to further education, and how they can collaborate together to see the town as a learning town. And I think it's a great concept and something that we're promoting in the findings from our research. So part of that is we have very clear documentation nationally on how we integrate strategic planning. It's not been implemented. Back to our IDD, there is a bit of implementation deficit disorder on how we create these communities where we can celebrate, we can walk to school. Several people here who may come from small rural villages remember walking to school all together and carry on before school and after school. You met everybody. And I think we need to look at how we can regenerate that using new technologies, new systems as part of that. Again, a clear part of this is the engagement process. If we don't engage, collaborate together, as I said, we need to move from the expert on the stage, as I'm standing here, to be more the activator. We move beyond being the facilitator. We need to be active and involved in the whole process. And again, how that can be integrated, the process working with the system. So Department of Environment, Department of Education, local authorities working together to create that community where we celebrate our schools, we celebrate our children growing up in their own communities, be it on the playing fields that they are sharing. So the local GA club is providing their facilities to the school as part of that learning community. So this is what we're finally coming out in our research work on this. And a great example of this, we've worked very closely with Grangegorman Master Plan. And again, they use the concept of 5, which is again very much based in our mythology. 5 is a magical figure in our Irish mythology. And then we have 4 provinces, but yet in Irish we call them 5, something very peculiar about Ireland. But the 5th province, not too far from here in County Meath, about 30 miles. If you have time, you should go and visit for anyone who's travelling abroad. And it was a place where people could come, lead down their arms and work and collaborate together. So I think the concept of 5 is very powerful, but also the Grangegorman used it in their whole design on how they connect with community. And as you can see the 5 fingers, but also the palm. And in the palm is where all the sporting fields, the tennis courts, etc. It's worth having a visit as they're developing that fabulous campus very close here to the city. And again, from a universal design, we talk about the 5 Ps, the philosophy. It's about inclusivity. We have key principles, as Anne outlined this morning. It is about people, which is the top finger. It is about a process, and it is about personalising that whole experience for all of us, including our students that we're looking at. So it is looking at it from a systems approach, and again looking at that process of discovery and spending time in that discovery, because it is about inquiring. People say, oh no, we know what the problem is. No, we don't know what the problem is in a lot of cases, and we need to spend time, because we probably don't have everybody in the room and understanding where their problems are and the difficulties they have in accessing education, then defining it, develop, and then deliver. And a common language, and I'm going to talk about moving beyond the social medical models to one which combines both the the body, the mind, and the social environment. And it's by the World Health Organization, who have 180 countries have signed up for it. It's called the ICF, the International Classification of Functioning. And Tim, in his opening address, talked about function and how we can clearly define function. If we want to engage with engineers, architects, etc., they want to have clear specifications. Through this, we have a language, but it also gives clear specificity. We'll keep moving on. Anyway, it gives precise, what's that? That might be a better word. Precise information about defining the person, both their biological, their psychological, and how they interact both socially and environmentally. And again, dialogue. As I said, we need to move from being an expert to being an activator. We need to be boundary hoppers. I like this expression. I came across it in a journal in Australia. And it is about, again, how we go across these silos. So, again, Department of Environment, working with Department of Education, working with the National Transport Authority, and a document they're about to publish very shortly is looking at how that can be integrated for a community from their transport, from the physical infrastructure, to actually accessing and getting onto the campus, getting onto the classroom, etc. So a significant, I think, step that we need to take, and I think that's part of our education, where we now need to be talking about transdisciplinary in our education, particularly at graduate level, at third level. New tools of the trade, just some that we have developed, particularly that have been used extensively both for the campus in UCD and Grangegorman, our Universal Design Building Guidance, which have over 900 pages defining the specific items regarding the built environment. Also looking at shared space, how we share, for example, anybody who goes to Europe and you go to the plaza where one side of you have a car going at 5 kilometres an hour, you have someone on a bicycle. Again, campuses and school environments, how we can actually share the space without killing each other is an important piece of work we're doing. And finally, in about 2 months' time, we will be launching new guidance on homes, how we design our homes better, which is a very hot topic here in Ireland, and also work we're doing in the whole area of dementia, looking at how we design homes for people with dementia to stay longer in their own homes. Again, just outline of one of our guidance documents. And just finally, as I see my time running out, going back to our education, what we're doing in education on building content that we share. And as you saw from the clip on the normals, we had 9 different colleges involved in designing and developing curricula that we make available to third level colleges. But we're also working at second level materials, which we have already piloted and have received very positive feedback. Critical to this is how people celebrate diversity in the classroom, and particularly with teenagers, not something they like to celebrate. Being different, they want to be part of the gang. And it is an interesting part of how we approach universal design or design with teenagers. It is trying to celebrate diversity, and I think we've kind of showing a route how we can do that, working with teachers on bringing that back into the classroom. And finally, we're working new project. We're just starting with the Royal Institute of Architects on building a continuing professional development course on universal design. So for practicing architects and designers, that it becomes part and parcel of their accreditation, particularly as they need to get CPD points on an annual basis. And finally, champions, and we have several of them here in the room today, is critical on getting that message out. And it is a clear message on how we celebrate diversity, how we can collaborate together to provide a better environment for our students, but for us all. And on that note, I would like to thank you for listening, and I'd like to celebrate ahead on the great work they're doing, and look forward to the next 2 days hearing great talks and meeting whole new people and enjoying the collaborative engagement that ahead always provide as part of their conferences. So thank you very much.